Hey everyone, how you doing today? Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. And one of the things I love about this channel is I get a lot of interesting folks reaching out to me with wonderful real estate investing stories. And someone we have today started investing in 2007. If you know anything about my story, 2007 was an interesting year because that was the peak of single family homes. So let's bring Daniel Johnson to the show and talk about his whole story starting in '07 to now. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, thanks, Michael. Doing well, and thanks for having me on. Yeah, as you indicated, 2007 was quite the tumultuous year. Started in a place where everyone thought that you could only go up in real estate. That real estate never went down.
Yeah.
That the price of real estate only went up. And I kind of caught the bug and wanted to buy my first property. And I was actually a senior in college, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
Had a bunch of roommates, and I was like, hey, look, we're paying rent to some landlord somewhere else. Why do I have to send a check away to someone else? Why don't I buy a place? So I teamed up with one of my roommates, and we actually ended up purchasing a townhouse in the Asheville area. And overall, it was not a bad experience.
Okay.
And it worked out really great because I got some of my roommates came over and we split up the rent or split the mortgage payment, and they paid, half of my mortgage.
Yeah.
So really a great situation.
Yeah. So Daniel, let's just tell everybody where in the country you are, all of that kind of, basic stuff. And then I'll start asking some questions because this
Sure.
is going to be fun.
Yeah. I'm located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So kind of right in the middle of the state, North Carolina, right halfway between the mountains and the beach.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. So 2007, I remember that year. Oh, I don't know. Fondly would be the wrong word. Whatever the opposite of fondly is. I remember going to real estate meetups, and what you said earlier was right. There was like a heartbeat in these rooms that just everybody thought real estate could never go down. I mean, it was the craziest thing I had ever heard or seen or like literally felt. I mean, real estate meetups, they're always generally positive because in order to, take an hour or 90 minutes of your time, you got to be wanting goodness. But it was weird. Every, family gathering or out with friends somehow came to real estate. I remember in my market where I live, not where I invest, people were flipping what I call contracts, right? They would buy and in my world, right, people were standing in line to buy essentially dirt, right? The condo that I'm in now, people were lining up to buy, I think at the time they're like $400,000 condos or townhouses that they weren't even going to be built for a year. And what would happen is that contract, it would be flipped 3 or 4 times before ultimately being built, and everybody would make 50 grand.
Yeah.
So that story took off, and suddenly everybody was doing it.
Yeah.
And it was like, when'd you flip? How'd you do that? I mean, it was not okay. And of course, it was all fueled by bad loans, and ultimately crashed. So yeah, '07 was, man, that was high in my market. I don't know anything about North Carolina. So Asheville, '07, what'd you pay for that townhouse?
Yeah, so it was 159, just a hair under 160.
Okay.
And being literally a college student I had a full-time job, so I had good income, good credit. I got 100% financing on it. So you kind of mark up all the check boxes that you can see a disaster being built. Fortunately for me, 100% financing at 160,000. Over the next 2 or 3 years, that townhouse dropped in value. I think the low point, a townhouse in the same neighborhood sold for about 110,000 at the bottom of the market.
That hurts. But again, well, I don't know this. What kind of loan did you take out? Was it a 30-year fix, or did you do one of these stupid loans?
Well, it was a 2-year adjustable rate. Now, Michael, fortunately, what happened after that is that rates really kind of, stuck to a lower level, and it was with a very good reputable credit union that really took good care of their members.
Okay.
So the rate never actually got out of control. It stayed,
but it could have.
Low. It could have, certainly could have. So, I mean, like literally you check all the boxes of disasters being built. It was one of those.
Okay, so this is going to be fun to unwind. So again, you buy it at the peak, you have no equity in the deal.
Mm-hmm.
You're house hacking before it was a thing, right? You have roommates and friends paying for it. So then you graduate college. Do the friends just bolt and you have to get new friends coming in, or how are you limping through what ultimately was a 30% drop?
Yeah. It was tough. Fortunately, my friends, they stuck around,
Okay.
my roommates, and they stuck around for a couple of years, continue to pay rent. I actually moved out, got married. So my wife didn't want to live with two other guys.
Shocking.
Amazing. We moved out, got a third renter, covered the mortgage with a little bit of free cash flow, after all said and done. And over the next, 5 years, well, I'll call it 3 years, my friends lived there. And then I had to become a real landlord after that. Right. Like I had to learn how to not just come over and hang out with my buddies and fix a couple things around the house. I actually had to go get people I didn't know and screen tenants and do all that real stuff,
Yeah. All right. So 2007 to, I'll just call it 2010, you got buddies living there. So kind of low stress, mortgage payment is paid. You're married, you're in a new place with your wife. And then you become a landlord. So 2010 was an interesting year, at least in my market, that was really close to the bottom. So are we talking that's when it's 110 value probably? Yeah.
Yeah, probably, and we're getting mailings, from investors wanting to buy our house on the cheap, which, at the end of the day, it was one of those things that was kind of like, do I just bail on it? Do I just take the loss? But continue to hold through that.
Well, good for you. Because again, what you're talking about there became known as the strategic default. And, that was in many states and many investors just threw in the towel like, I'm done. Which was really interesting because that's one of the reasons I talk so much about cash flow being conservative fixed rate debt, because I saw that breaking point in lots of people. And it's interesting because if you buy for cash flow and of course you have fixed rate debt, it doesn't, the 110 doesn't matter. You just hold forever.
Yeah.
And that's why I keep preaching that message. It doesn't resonate well when the market's going hot. It will resonate well if the market tops out. But yeah, I hope people are hearing this, because what allowed you to stick with it is you had at least a little cash flow. It was hard, but you had some, right? It wasn't an alligator.
Yeah. I mean, we were cash flowing, $150, $200 a month.
Yeah.
And then as my old roommates rolled out, I realized, hey, look, rents are actually going up a little bit. The demand's up a little bit. And so as my roommates rolled out, I increased rents. And we ended up getting $300 a month cash flow. Now, I mean, we started my very first real tenant was paying about $1,100 a month.
Yeah.
We still own this property today. And now the tenant's paying $1,500 a month.
Yeah.
And we've of course refinanced our mortgage and have a fixed mortgage and we're cash flowing, $500 a month on this property now.
Yeah. So what I want people to hear from this is, what I hope people take from this one is if you always buy with cash flow in mind, you can hold out the bumps, right? 160 to 110. I'm guessing, again, I have no idea. I'm just going to guess. I'm going to guess it's 180 to 200 today.
Yeah. Maybe 210, 220.
Yeah.
Asheville is kind of a crazy market right now. So
yeah. So again, let's just call it 200, right? That's a, what is that mathematically? 25% increase in value. And it's, again, because you had cash flow, you can hold out. You weren't forced to sell. So many people, again, California wise, they had negative cash flow, but it's a party when it goes up 50 grand a year. Cause you're like, screw it. I'll refi in 2 years. I'll pull my money out. I have a high income. I can limp through this. No, people, don't play that game. Don't bet on appreciation ever.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So where did we go from that first property? When did you get the second one?
Yeah. So second property happened. Let me see. It was actually quite a time, a difference in time, because my wife and I, we moved around a little bit, didn't actually jump on anything, but we did a little bit of, kind of live-in flips where we would buy a house that needed some work. We'd live in it for 2 years, fix it up, take the capital out of that. And then we kind of roll it into our next property. So we did maybe 2 or 3 quote unquote live-in flips over the next 6 or 7 years. In 2013 is
Well,
when we bought.
one sec.
Sure.
I want to talk about that experience because that is a very, 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 very smart thing to do.
Yeah.
If you can move into a fixer-upper primary residence, A, you get the best financing.
Mhm.
B, if you stay there 2 years, you can wring out all of the equity, at least in most markets, tax-free. Because as a married couple, you get up to $500,000, and you could do that every 2 years. Historically, it used to be do this once in your life. You can do it every 2 years. So, if one thing I want people to talk about is house hacking, right? If you're a college student, house hacking is awesome. But if you're newly married and you can stand to live in a flip where maybe the kitchen's not perfect and the bathroom's not perfect, and you're kind of moving around the noise, you can make meaningful jumps in family finances, leveraging that 2-year tax-free profit. So let's run some of those numbers. I'm going to guess at least a couple of those were home runs or, doubles at least.
Yeah. And in particular, one, we bought a house in Raleigh, North Carolina. We literally lived there for about 8 months. And there was a job change, which in the tax code, if you move more than, I think it's 50 miles away, for a job change, you can actually still take advantage of the tax exemption.
Cool.
So we only lived there for about 8 months, but we bought a foreclosure. We literally held the bank's head to the table because it was not moving. We put in an offer and they said, no, we can't do that. We have to send that up to our manager. They're not going to approve it. We said, okay, we'll send it up to the manager. And they were on a deadline. They had to clear this property out. So we ended up getting, I'm going to have a hard time recalling the actual numbers, but we got about $30,000 off of the market or the price at market. We put in some sweat equity into the kitchen, put in some sweat equity into the bathrooms. And then in 8 months, literally sold it for about $40,000 to $50,000 more than we had bought it for just 8 months prior.
Yeah. And again, these are things that are possible when you work as a couple, right? One of the things that I hope comes through in my book is that Olivia and I were on the same page, right? In our instance, it was, hey, we're going to sacrifice, live below our means, needs and wants, all of those things I talk about all the time. But a live-in flip, I mean, if you're newly married in your 20s or 30s, no kids yet, it's obviously easier with no kids. Let's be clear, right? Having dust and nails and all of this stuff around an infant is probably not a wise idea. But if you're newly married, again, house hack if you're single. Newly married, dude, look at the tax code and let it freaking help your financial future. Live-in flips is something we need to talk about more. So I'm so glad we're talking about that. And again, if you're in a high price state like California, maybe New York or Florida, Texas these days, you really can get big jumps. If you're in a slower moving state, you do got to make sure you buy with equity in place, i.e. get a discounted purchase, make sure you're doing the right additions and don't go crazy. But dude, let the tax code help you build wealth. So I'm glad you brought that up. It builds your nest egg, right? It builds your nest egg.
Yeah. It gave us firepower to move into the next property, which the next property is kind of the springboard that really pushed us into acquiring multiple properties.
Tell me. Let's go. I love this story so far.
Yeah. So we moved from Raleigh to Asheville. So we kind of made our way back and forth across the state. We landed back in Asheville again for a job. And we ended up buying a property that if we had not done the house in Raleigh, we wouldn't have been able to afford to get into this house.
Exactly.
But we ended up buying a property in Asheville that had a nice main home, but then it also had a garage apartment behind it. So it had an attached garage apartment behind it. And in my mind, I was like, hey, look, this is going to pay for half of our mortgage or whatever the case is. And so we move in, we fix up that garage apartment. It was a little outdated. We did some work to it and then started renting it out to long-term tenants. And what we found, this was in 2014.
Okay.
What we found is we had a really hard time locking down good long-term tenants. It was just a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, small apartment. We just had a really hard time locking down good long-term tenants. And after about a year and a half of rolling through a couple of tenants that didn't work out, we decided, hey, look, there's this Airbnb thing in 2015.
Yeah.
And things were kind of, travel was heating up. People were moving about the country. And we said, let's just try this out. Let's get some furniture. Let's put it in there. Let's try it out. And my goodness, it just lit a spark, because we realized we're making $1,800 a month. We're cleaning it ourselves, is right behind our the house, and no big deal. Making probably $300 more than our mortgage payment per month. So we went from paying a $1,500 a month mortgage payment to making $1,800 a month on this garage apartment. And we were like, okay, well, let's figure out how to do this again.
Some is good, more is better.
Yeah. Well, yeah. In this situation, it definitely was.
So again, I just want to summarize what I heard you say. So you leverage the equity you built up in these live-in flips. Awesome. Love that story. Tax saving, all good. People, please listen to this and take advantage of that. Again, communicate with your significant other, be on the same page. Then you go in, you try to rent you try to do monthly or even yearly leases. Doesn't really work, for whatever reason. Airbnb comes around 2015. You're like, hey, let's roll the dice again together. You're making this decision. You do some more capital investments because, again, typically you don't have furniture. Now you're putting in furniture and utensils and pots and pans and all of that stuff. Yep. And it takes off. It's a hit. And are you doing dailies, weekly minimums? What are we doing back in 2015?
Yeah, 2015 we were doing 2-night minimums.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we would squeeze in every once in a while if we had a gap. We could make an extra $100 on it or something like that. We'd do a one-nighter.
Yeah, you start with 2 nights. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, and then that proves out to be a home run. And at this point, you were going from what maybe was doing half your mortgage to covering your mortgage and then some. So you're living for free. Life's good.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Life's living for free. That's never bad, folks. Pay attention. This is a trend. So where do you go from there? That's so far. I love this story.
Yeah. And so after that, we decide, hey, look, we do the math and we're like, hey, look, if we move out of the main house, start renting the main house out long-term, that's going to give us another $1,100 a month on top of our $1,800
it's all gravy.
A month. Yeah. Because it's all gravy on top of that. And so we actually find a lot that's just down the street from us. Because we love the neighborhood that we're in, we find a lot down the street from us, and we end up building a house just down the street that we can still manage the property very easily because we're just down the street.
Now let's just be clear what down the street means, because everybody has different definitions.
Five houses down, 5
yeah,
lots.
Okay, we're talking same block.
yeah, exactly.
Down the street. Exactly. Got it. All right, cool. All right, so you're doing new construction.
Yeah. So this was an interesting little twist on it. We had a really hard time finding a contractor, and so we actually went to the direction of doing a modular build. And I don't know how familiar folks are with modular builds, but they build it in a factory, build the bones of the house in a factory, and then they ship it on a trailer.
Yeah, pallets or whatever.
100 miles down the road, and they set it up in place on a foundation, and then they do the finished work outside. We ended up building the house for about $30,000 or $40,000 under market price.
Wow. So a modular build like that, obviously, I just want people to realize you're going to some website or some factory going, I want that one, right? There's a menu, because again, they got to build to some level, right?
Well, I'll tell you, it was kind of interesting. We went through a provider, you could think of them as like a dealer, quote unquote dealer. Okay. But what they do is they go back to the factory and they have engineers at the factory that take your blueprint and your plan. And so we basically took this plan and we made a whole bunch of adjustments. And so my wife, she's got a design background. She's an art major. Nice. So we made all these adjustments to this floor plan and built it exactly the way that we wanted to.
Ah, very cool. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so actually at the end of the day, and a lot of people think of modular as like manufactured, like a double wide, that type of thing. But the house itself if you had walked up on it, you would have had no idea that it was built in a factory.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's not really building in a factory. What that really means to me is they're just like, it's almost like a kit build. It's still sticks and bricks. It's all the same thing as yeah. So that's pretty awesome.
Exactly.
All right. So I have no idea how long that takes. So from the moment your wife finally gets the drawing she wants to the finished product, are we talking like 6 months, 4 months? I have no idea.
From the time that we submitted the final architectural drawings to the engineers there, they approved them. They got, they have to get state certification on the engineered plans.
Sure.
3 months later, they were putting the pieces in place.
Nice.
The four blocks, in place.
Okay.
And then it was probably about 3 months after that the place was move-in ready. So start to finish 6 months.
All right. So now you move into that place. You've got the original college townhouse.
Yep.
You've got so you do a yearly lease on the big house, and you're still doing Airbnb on the garage.
Exactly.
You're living four or five houses down. Life's good, right? Because you're making $1,500-$1,600 on the house 4 blocks down. You're now making $400 or $500 on the townhouse. You refied the debt into 30-year money. You're living in a brand new custom home. You're loving life. So far, real estate's treating you okay, even though you bought at the peak.
Yeah. Yeah. 100. And one big, huge thing to note about the move from the house down the street is that when we built the other house, because if you'll remember, we were making $300 a month living in that house.
Exactly.
Once we started renting out the main house, we were making an extra $1,100 a month. That actually covered our mortgage for our new house.
Yeah.
So if you think about kind of the stacking mechanism of buying a house and building out the cash flow on the house and moving out of that house, it adds even more cash flow. It paid for the mortgage on our new house, which freed us up financially even more.
Well, that doesn't suck.
No.
So where do you go from there? Do you keep stacking, or what's the story since then?
Yeah. So, I mean, we can keep going. I mean, we bought a lot of houses. We sold a lot of houses over the years.
What's the portfolio look like today that you have as rentals?
So today I entered into some partnerships with some folks that I know. And last year, one of the biggest wins for us, 2 years ago, we bought a fourplex, 4 condos in Asheville. We bought them for $411,000 for the entire building. Basically, it's one building. We bought the entire building for $411,000. We put about $125,000 into the property. They appraised for about $820,000 a year later. So the equity build on that was about $350,000 over the course of 1 year. And those 4 units, we did a BRRRR strategy. We just pulled cash out. We still own those. They're 4 Airbnb properties now.
Oh, wow.
Kicking out pretty well. We had a little bit of a stumble step last year with the pandemic, but it kind of made our way through that. And so the whole portfolio now is those 4 properties. We've moved since we were in Asheville.
Of course you have.
Of course, yeah. So we sold that modular home at a nice, rich profit because we were able to build it and do it in the right way.
Again, tax savings, I'm sure.
Once again, moving for job related, even though we stayed there for exactly a year, moved for job related reasons, and we were able to not pay any taxes on the gains of that property. So we now have 1 property here in Winston-Salem that is a long-term rental, in addition to our primary residence, and then we have the college housing, the townhouse that we bought in 2007, still own that.
Nice.
We have the 2-unit, that's the Airbnb and the long-term rental. And then we have the 4 condos as well as another short-term rental in the Asheville market. So we're up to a total of about 8 properties, I believe, now at this point in time.
Very, very cool. And before we get into what you're doing now, what is the plan? What are you and the wife talking about for the future? Are you looking to add more? Are you good to go? What do you see kind of come in the next 5 or 6 years?
Yeah. I mean, right now we're just trying to think really strategically about it. We definitely want to add to the portfolio, but we want to add properties that are going to fit our situation. We're not just going out and just trying to buy any deal that we can. Yeah. We really want to centralize where we are operating from, and especially in the Winston-Salem area that we are now. There's a great market right around the college. Wake Forest University is based here. And so there's a great little market there, but we're just kind of waiting for some of these units to turn over and to have a good opportunity to enter in. And so we're just kind of being patient with it at the moment. Yeah. And like here, like the rest of the country, the market's hot, and it's hard to find. It's hard to find more properties.
Yeah, very, very cool. So one thing we need to talk about is obviously the flexibility that real estate investing has given you, allowed you to transition, not really careers, but jobs. You've gone from working for the man
Yeah.
to working for yourself. So why don't we talk about that transition? Because lots of people want to do that. When did you think about it? Why'd you make, what made you pull the trigger finally? And then we can talk about what you're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah. So probably about 5 years ago, I really started getting the itch, the bug to, and it was right around the time when a lot of the Airbnb stuff started, working really well. And I was like, hey, look, I think I want to pursue this a little bit more. The timing never really worked out well. There was always, good opportunities with my employer and that sort of thing. I was continuing to promote up, get pay increases, that sort of thing. And I kind of utilize those and use those to my advantage to be able to buy some of these more properties.
Being employed is not bad when you got to get credit.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the W-2 in order to get, some of these, conventional loans was really, really helpful. And if I had taken the leap 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't be where I am right now with the real estate side.
No doubt. And I want people to hear that. A lot of people are in a rush to quit. Dude, a W-2 job to get this cheap ass money. Awesome. I can't get cheap ass money because I don't have a W-2, right? Yeah. Just think about that. If you're at zero, keep your damn job because you can get cheap ass money.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it was probably 5 years ago that spark was kind of lit. But working through the pandemic and just seeing how the world had changed and the flexibility that people had with the way that they were engaging with people around the world. I mean, Zoom meetings, I'd been doing Zoom meetings for a long time. By profession, I'm a financial planner. And so I've been doing, financial planning meetings with folks that lived all over the country for a long time via Zoom, but it was just like last year that it exploded and everyone was kind of forced to do that. And once that happened, it was kind of one of those things that I was like, hey, look, there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity to kind of expand my horizons to, and obviously the properties that we had built up over the previous, 3 years had started cash flowing, and it provided some of that income support that we needed to be able to break free and to lose the W-2 job and to start, kind of the new venture there.
Yeah. That's an awesome story. Again, real estate investing can work. You have to hold for long-term, no alligators, use the tax code, live in remodels. I mean, there's so many things in this I hope people are hearing, right? You tried long-term lease on a garage. It didn't work. You went Airbnb, you cleaned it yourself. You moved down the street, modular builds, financial flexibility to go on your own when the time is right. It's just an awesome story. So what are you doing now for folks?
Yeah. So I started in January, in the financial planning world, there's a couple of different ways you can get compensated, but it's a fee-only financial planning company. So basically, I work with real estate investors nearly exclusively, helping real estate investors understand their situation, their portfolios of their properties, work around with the tax code, optimize it to their situation, work with their CPA hand in hand along the way. And then, kind of help them plan for the future. If it's something that they're not necessarily comfortable in doing on their own, and they want a second opinion, they want somebody looking over their shoulders or guiding them through it. That's where I am. I'm working primarily with real estate investors and encouraging that. A lot of financial advisors don't encourage real estate investment because it's not something that they can manage.
Of course, man. They only make money on stocks and mutual funds and stuff like that. Of course. It's crazy.
Yeah. So my compensation, I don't get paid to manage people's money. I mean, I do it for folks, but it's not, I get paid regardless of whether I manage their money or not. So if somebody wants to continue investing in real estate, by all means, go for it. If somebody wants to invest in crypto or whatever the case is, go for it. We can figure out a safe way to move forward with it and to have a good plan behind it. So
awesome. So Daniel, where can people learn more about you? What's your website? Where do you want them to go? Because I'm sure a lot of real estate investors are looking for a financial planner that kind of gets real estate.
Yeah. So my website is refocusfp.com. So refocusfp.com.
Awesome. I will make sure, folks, that is the first line in the description, just in case you didn't get it. Refocus FP.
Yep.
I wrote that.
Financial planning. Yep. FP.
Refocus at fp.com. That'll be first line in the description. This has been a lot of fun, man. Any closing thoughts?
No, I would just encourage everyone, that one rental at a time. Like literally you can do so much just by adding a single rental every few years. And that compounds over time. If you hold those for 30 years, at retirement, it's going to cash flow more than you ever dreamed that you would have income in retirement. So, just, I mean, keep working at it, keep analyzing deals, keep looking at your markets that you're interested in, keep talking with others, networking, and just try to make some progress every couple of years on adding another property.
Yeah. And I just want to summarize a couple of things I noted down during this discussion. One, he bought at the peak, which most people failed at. They just gave up. They ran away. He bought at the peak when it would cash flow. He held, and now he's up, tens of thousands of dollars. He still owns it today. Live-in remodels. Again, I love this idea of helping, if you're in college, right? College senior, house hack, roommate hack, whatever the heck you want to call it. You get married, you find that special person, talk to them. Hey, honey, let's work 6 years, right? We're going to do 3 live-in flips intentionally every 2 years. Unless of course you get a job, move 50 miles, all those things. But let's just assume it's 3. We're going to do 3 flips, honey, from 24 to 30. Then we'll have kids. All of the, do things on purpose. This is just awesome. And again, go to refocusfp.com if you want to talk to a financial planner who gets real estate, man. I appreciate your time. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Awesome.